Imagine losing a massive real estate deal and risking tens of thousands of dollars in home equity, all because you refused to cover the cost of a daily cup of coffee.
Right. Which sounds completely absurd when you just say it like that.
It does. It sounds crazy. But today, we actually have our hands on a fascinating, highly sensitive document that perfectly captures that exact scenario.
Yeah, it's a really unique piece of source material we're looking at today.
Exactly. So to set the scene, it's Friday, August 21st, 2026. And we are looking at this private market update and pricing recommendation letter. It was written by an Indianapolis real estate broker named Cara Conde, and it's directed to a seller in a neighborhood called Bentwood Park.
And I have to say, this document is a stark departure from, the glossy marketing brochures we usually see in this industry.
For sure. No pictures of freshly baked cookies here.
No, definitely not. It is a blunt, highly analytical intervention. I mean, it's really designed to wake a client up to a rapidly changing economic reality.
Right. And so our mission for this deep dive is to take this one micro example, right, this single stubborn house sitting on the market, and use it to unpack the macro realities of the late 2026 economy. We are going to explore the behavioral psychology of selling an asset and, well, the brutal, unforgiving math of interest rates.
It's a lot to get into.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this because we have a seller who absolutely, positively does not want to lower their asking price.
Right.
And a broker who is basically forced to deliver the hard truth.
Yeah, and for anyone tuning in, whether you are actively navigating the housing market right now, or maybe managing an investment portfolio.
Or just trying to buy your first place.
Exactly. Or even if you're just fascinated by the quirks of behavioral economics, this letter is an absolute masterclass in the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we constantly anchor our expectations to a past reality, right? And we refuse to adapt when the facts on the ground actually change.
We hold on to what we thought we had.
Right. So by examining this specific standoff, we can see the exact mechanics of what happens when human ego collides with market adaptation.
It's so true. Let's set the scene at U&827 Zimmerman Lane.
Okay.
This particular house went on the market back on April 3, 2026.
April 3rd. Got it.
Right. And fast forward to today, late August, the house has been sitting for 140 days.
Wow. 140 days.
Yeah, which is huge. Multiple price reductions have already happened, bringing the current asking price down to $360,000.
Okay.
And yet there are virtually no showings. I mean, total silence from buyers.
Just crickets.
Crickets.
Yeah, and that 140-day mark, that is the crux of the broker's central argument here.
How so?
Well, she tells the seller in no uncertain terms that continuing to hold the price at $360,000 is no longer a neutral decision.
Right, it's not just waiting to see what happens.
Exactly. It is an active choice that is costing the seller money and leverage every single day. The seller is operating under this illusion that waiting is safe, like we'll just wait it out. But the broker's thesis is that the biggest risk they face right now isn't reducing the price.
Right.
The biggest risk is the act of waiting itself.
Honestly, if I'm the seller, I'm reading that assessment and I'm pushing back hard.
Really? You'd push back?
I would. Because, look, if a house is inherently worth $360,000 based on the bricks, the mortar, the square footage, then it's worth $360,000, right? I mean, the physical structure hasn't deteriorated since April.
No, the house is the exact same.
Right. So why does simply waiting suddenly destroy the value of the asset? Like, it's less like a carton of milk going sour and more like, I don't know, walking past an empty restaurant on a busy Friday night.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. The food inside might be incredible, but because nobody else is eating there, your brain's social proof algorithm immediately assumes something must be wrong with the kitchen.
Yes. And that mechanism of perception is entirely what drives marketplace value.
It's all psychological.
It really is. A house isn't valued in a vacuum. It's valued in a dynamic ecosystem that is completely driven by momentum.
So when the momentum dies, the value dies.
Basically, yeah. When buyers see a listing that has been sitting untouched for 5 months, their immediate psychological response is suspicion.
Right, they're like, what's wrong with this place?
Exactly. They assume structural damage or a bad foundation, or maybe they just think it's an unreasonable seller.
Oh, totally.
So the perceived value plummets because the market relies on the actions of other buyers to validate a price tag.
But the bricks haven't changed.
No.
To understand why that $360,000 price tag is suddenly, like, radioactive, we have to look at the invisible hand choking the life out of this listing.
The interest rates.
Exactly. It all comes down to the shifting financial atmosphere around those bricks.
Yeah.
Let's look at the timeline the broker lays out regarding these rates. Back in early April, when this house hit the market, mortgage rates were hovering around 6.30 to 6.46%.
Right. That was the spring market.
Yeah. But today, in late August 2026, they are sitting at 6.65%.
And, a fraction of a percent might sound statistically insignificant to a casual observer. Like, who cares about a 0.2 increase?
Right. Until you look at the monthly math, which the letter breaks down to show exactly where the blood is on the floor here.
It gets ugly fast.
It really does. Let's walk through her chart. If a buyer put 20% down on this $360,000 house back in April at that 6.3% rate, their monthly principal and interest payment was $1,783.
Okay, $1,783.
Right. But today, buying that exact same house at that exact same $360,000 price, but at the 6.65% rate, that pushes the payment to $1,849 a month.
Wow. What's fascinating here is the psychological and mathematical weight of that specific dollar amount.
Yeah.
Because it adds an extra $66 a month.
Right.
And on the surface, you might assume anyone qualifying for a multi-$100,000 loan can absorb a $66 difference.
You would think so, right? It's like a dinner out.
Exactly. But that completely ignores the underlying mechanics of mortgage lending and affordability thresholds.
The dreaded debt-to-income ratio.
Yes. Lenders look at debt-to-income ratios with ruthless precision. It is a hard regulatory ceiling.
They don't bend the rules for anyone.
No, they don't. So a buyer who is already stretching their budget to the absolute maximum to hit that $1,783 payment in April, they are mathematically disqualified from the $1,849 payment in August.
That is wild. They are literally priced out over the cost of a couple of pizzas.
And for the buyers who can still absorb the cost, that extra $66 feels like an arbitrary penalty.
Oh, for sure. I'd be so mad.
Right. They are looking at the same property and realizing they are paying a premium for an asset that hasn't improved one bit.
The bricks are the same.
The bricks are the same.
Yeah.
So the psychological response is to either pivot to a different property where they feel they are getting more for their expanded budget, or they simply sit on the sidelines.
So the seller is basically demanding the buyer absorb the cost of a shifting macroeconomic environment.
Very much.
They want their April money in an August world.
Well put, yes.
But I can easily hear a frustrated seller blaming the Federal Reserve for this entire mess.
Oh, absolutely. That happens all the time.
Right. They might claim the market is frozen universally and it's totally out of their hands.
Yeah.
But the broker actually anticipates this, though, by zooming in on what is happening right on Zimmerman Lane.
Yeah.
Are other people in this specific neighborhood actually selling their homes?
And the localized data is where the broker systematically dismantles the seller's narrative that the market is entirely to blame.
Yeah, let's bring up these sold comparables for Bentwood Park because the contrast is stark.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so we have 10567 Wiley Lane, a 5-bedroom, 3,300 square foot house. It sold for $394,500 in just 8 days.
8 days. Wow.
8 days. Then there's 1449 Danielle Drive, which sold for $365,000 in 90 days.
Okay, a bit longer, but it moved.
Right. But then you look at 10644 Wiley Lane. It eventually sold for $390,000, but it took 166 days on the market to get there.
Yeah, parsing that data reveals a very distinct pattern.
What stands out to you?
Well, a stubborn seller looks at a neighbor getting $390,000 and assumes their own $360,000 asking price is a massive bargain.
Right. They think they're giving it away.
Exactly. But they ignore the mechanism behind those numbers. The homes securing top-tier pricing, the mid-360s to low 390s, they are the larger properties.
Oh, I see.
And more importantly, the homes capturing absolute premium value are moving fast.
Like that 8-day one.
Yes, 8 to 42 days, that 166-day outlier, that shows a property that languished and likely had to make significant concessions to finally close.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The broker uses this localized velocity data to corner the seller's emotional resistance with pure logic.
She traps them with their own neighborhood's numbers.
Exactly. The subtext of her analysis is blunt. She's basically saying, the market isn't dead. The market is just ignoring you. I know, right? At 140 days on the market, 10827 Zimmerman Lane is a glaring anomaly.
Yeah.
The neighborhood comparables prove that qualified buyers exist. They are actively spending capital, but they are purposefully rejecting this specific house at this specific price point.
And that speed versus price dynamic is heavily driven by modern real estate algorithms, too.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, when a listing is fresh, platforms like Zillow or Redfin, they push it to the top of buyer feeds.
Right, it's the shiny new thing.
Exactly. You capture the urgency of a competitive market. But when a listing hits 140 days, the algorithm buries it.
It's basically invisible.
Completely. Buyers sorting by newest never even see it. The only people looking at a 140-day-old listing are bargain hunters actively searching for distressed sellers.
Vultures, basically.
Basically, yeah.
So, faced with this reality, the algorithmic penalty, the fast-moving neighbors, the interest rate math, I'd still have to advocate for the seller's likely perspective here.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
I would look at the situation and say, fine, I'll just pull the listing and wait until November.
Oh.
The Fed is bound to cut rates eventually, and when they do, my buyer will magically reappear.
Yeah, that's a common thought.
Right. Why wouldn't someone just wait out the storm?
Because relying on a miraculous shift in monetary policy is gambling. It's not a strategy.
Fair point.
The broker actually addresses this directly by laying out the macroeconomic outlook for September through mid-November 2026.
What does she predict?
She references projections from Fannie Mae, and they essentially dictate the liquidity and forecasting of the entire U.S. mortgage market.
So they know what they're talking about.
They absolutely do. And their model suggests rates are more likely to drift slightly higher, approaching 6.8% in the fourth quarter.
Oh, wow. So waiting makes it worse.
Yes. Betting against that data means you are preparing for a scenario that the largest financial institutions say isn't coming.
The cavalry is not coming over the hill.
No, it's not.
And because the cavalry isn't coming, the broker outlines 4 massive hidden costs of waiting. She lays them out like a prosecutor.
Let's hear them.
First is the algorithmic decay we just talked about. Further staleness.
Right.
Every week without a showing requires a steeper discount to eventually attract a buyer.
Yep.
Second is buyer leverage. When buyers see a listing bleeding out on day 140, they smell blood in the water.
The vultures we mentioned earlier?
Exactly.
Huh.
They know the seller is desperate, which entirely justifies throwing out aggressive lowball offers or demanding unreasonable repair concessions after the inspection.
And the third hidden cost is often the most detrimental because it involves actual cash flow.
What is it?
Carrying costs.
Oh, right.
Sellers fixate on the final sale price, but they ignore the causality of holding the asset.
Because it's not free to just sit there.
No, not at all. Every month that house sits empty or unsold, the seller is still responsible for the 6% mortgage payment, the Marion County property taxes, the insurance premiums, and the utility bills keeping the lights on. They are actively bleeding thousands of dollars in cash to defend a hypothetical price point that the market refuses to validate.
That is just painful.
Yeah.
And the fourth cost she lists is lost momentum, which brings us to the broker's ultimate recommendation here.
Right, the big reveal.
Because the seller is bleeding cash on these carrying costs, the broker realizes a token $2,000 price cut won't stop the bleeding.
A drop in the bucket.
Right. She has to recommend something drastic. So she advises a massive cut, pulling the price all the way down to a range of $334,900 to $339,900.
Wow. And the mechanism behind a cut of that magnitude goes directly back to the monthly affordability math we talked about earlier.
It's to offset that $66.
Exactly. The strategy is to mathematically shock the system. By dropping the price by roughly $25,000, the seller effectively buys down the buyer's monthly payment to match those April affordability levels.
It neutralizes the impact of that 6.65% interest rate.
Exactly. Furthermore, a massive cut triggers algorithmic alerts.
Oh, right, on Zillow and stuff.
Yeah. Thousands of buyers who previously scrolled past the house suddenly receive a price-improved notification, and that artificially resets the listing's momentum.
Still, telling a client they need to slash their perceived net worth by $25,000 is a fantastic way to get fired.
It is incredibly risky.
It requires immense confidence, which makes me wonder who this broker, Cara Conde, actually is, you know?
Right.
Like, why should a seller trust her deeply aggressive calculus of the 2026 market? If my agent is just someone who takes nice photos on their phone and posts them to social media, I'm throwing this letter straight in the trash.
I would too. But the source material includes a broad overview of the broker's published articles and analytical insights, and it reveals a professional operating on a completely different structural level.
How so?
Well, a standard residential agent focuses heavily on emotional marketing, right? Selling the dream of a nice backyard or a cozy fireplace.
The cookies in the oven.
Exactly. But this broker approaches a residential home with the same rigorous data-first calculus used in commercial capital flow.
Yeah, looking at her resume, it is staggering.
It really is.
She is actively tracking macro trends and how they directly impact central Indiana. Like, she writes about the migration of San Francisco and California buyers relocating to suburbs like Carmel and Fishers, specifically to capture monthly cost savings.
She sees the big picture.
She does. And more importantly, she is publishing deep dives on the Indianapolis industrial market, navigating commercial zoning laws, and analyzing warehouse investments in Plainfield.
Because she understands the broader mechanics of how capital moves,
Yeah.
she is actively navigating 1031 exchanges.
Remind me what those are again.
They are these complex tax deferment strategies used by commercial investors to roll profits from one property into another.
Oh, okay.
And she is tracking equity multiples, which is a metric commercial investors use to measure exactly how much their cash will multiply over the lifespan of a multi-million-dollar deal. She's evaluating internal rates of return on massive industrial facilities. Someone analyzing capital efficiency on that scale isn't relying on a hunch to price a 3-bedroom home on Zimmerman Ln.
No kidding. So what does this all mean? It means this pricing recommendation is the result of a structural understanding of the economy.
Exactly.
The documents show she actually predicted back in May that the second quarter of 2026 was going to be the sweet spot for a buyer's market.
She called it early.
She did. She saw the shift in the data long before the seller felt it in their wallet.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, navigating a shifting economy requires an advisor who understands macroeconomic trends, not just neighborhood aesthetics.
You need a strategist, not a photographer.
Right. She synthesized national interest rate projections, commercial development patterns, and the hyper-local velocity of neighborhood comparables. And she distilled all of that dense data into one highly actionable, albeit painful, piece of advice.
It is a very bitter pill to swallow. But to synthesize the main takeaways from this deep dive, successfully selling an asset in a shifting market requires leaving your ego entirely out of the equation.
Entirely.
You have to respect the cold, hard math of interest rates. You have to understand that a $66 shift in affordability can literally break a transaction.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that time is the absolute enemy of a stale listing. The longer you hold out for yesterday's price, the more actual cash you burn today.
This raises an important question, though. And it's a concept that expands well beyond the single document.
Okay, what is it?
We've focused intensely on the financial decay experienced by the individual seller holding onto a stale listing on Zimmerman Ln.
Right, the seller's pain.
But consider the macro effect on the community. What happens to an entire neighborhood like Bentwood Park when multiple sellers refuse to accept this hard truth?
Oh, man. It creates a sort of contagion of stubbornness.
Precisely that. If one house sits empty for 140 days, the algorithm treats it as an outlier. But if 3 or 4 sellers in the exact same subdivision all anchor their expectations to the past, and their houses sit for 160 or 200 days with zero movement,
then what happens?
Those stale listings become the new foundational data for the neighborhood.
Wow.
The pricing algorithms see stagnation across the board. The stubbornness and ego of a few individual sellers can eventually artificially drag down the property values and perceived desirability of an entire community.
That is wild. The standoff doesn't just hurt your own bottom line, it actively damages the equity of the neighbors around you.
It really does.
It completely reframes that standard real estate narrative from a solitary victory lap into a collective economic ecosystem.
It sure does.
I highly encourage everyone listening to take a fresh, critical look at the hard truths in your own financial lives. Check your ego against the math and see where you might be anchoring to a past that no longer exists. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.